You've got your mechs. You've got your tanks, infantry, air support, artillery, fortifications. You've modeled up that terrain, mines and tank traps and mech traps. What about support vehicles? Exploring that aspect of Battletech and building the checklist, asking the questions, is there some tactical value, some tactica value to be gained? A great example is the mobile HQ, the ability to gain that bonus on initiative representing command and control and advanced communications. Other support vehicles like the Coolant truck, that's what we're going to explore in this vlog. And what triggered this was I was building some lances. One of the ways that I like to build lances is physically to take out the mechs and be like, this is the first group of mechs that I really enjoy playing. I want to play all the time. The Warhammer, the Battlemaster, archers, longbows. Then I've got a second group of machines where I'm like, I love these mechs, but I haven't played them as much. They're solid, like the Valkyrie. And then the third group are just machines that I don't play that often. And I mix and match and try to visually build lances and crunch the battle value numbers and see what I'm feeling. In exploring my miniature collection, I'm like, oh, Coolant trucks. I haven't played one of these in a long time. I find them, of course, to be very mission specific. The rules make sense, but they're a little bit restrictive. But look, let's jump in because certainly with so many different vehicles in Battletech and kind of the third-party support and 3D print, you could easily find 2 or 3 Coolant trucks, paint them up, add them to your miniature collection. And I would say, on a side note, on a hobby note, we're doing this miniature wargaming thing. We're doing this Battletech thing. I would look to acquire over time, maybe not as much importance as mechs and frontline vehicles and battle tanks, but I would look to acquire some of these support vehicles for my collection because as you make your way through Battletech and different missions, it's options. It's fun. It's other things to kind of explore and play and experiment with. So the idea of a Coolant truck, heat bad for mechs. Mechs overheat. They get in trouble on the battlefield. So you can hook these trucks up to mechs, pump the coolant, bring that heat down very, very fast. It kind of makes sense on that level. I mean, certainly maybe you have a machine that has taken a number of engine hits and is about to cook off with its ammo, or in the narrative it's damaged, it's shedding heat, you can't shut it down, or it's continually firing and targets are approaching and you need to hose it off, cool it down, get it back in the game. That kind of makes sense. But how does it translate out to the actual tactica? The actual tactica on the table. So to hook up takes a turn. You become immobile and the vehicle becomes essentially immobilized. That makes targeting, that makes firing on it. I don't want to say you're going to miss. There's no way you can miss, but it makes it much easier to hit. Now, in the narrative rules, of course, if a mech is hooked up to a Coolant truck, as long as it's not firing at you, generally it'll be ignored, right? Same thing with force withdrawal or a mech powering down and surrendering or vehicles being abandoned. There are kind of rules of war, although you read the narrative and you read the books, they're conveniently forgotten, usually by House Carita, when necessary, when expedient. So from that perspective, though, if we're playing with those rules, tactically, one of the ways you approach the Coolant truck is I'm cooling things down. I'm hooking things up. It's part of a fire base, right? I've got my 2 longbows in the back, my LRM carriers, and I am firing every single turn. I'm hooking this thing up and I'm cooling it down. So if I'm shooting at you, you're going to shoot at me. What if I'm advancing? What if things are moving? So it's not always that practical. And from that perspective of the time that it takes to hook up, that you're immobile, the positioning of it, you're like, for what it clears, like, how about I just let my heat sinks deal with it? Like, sure, maybe. I mean, once or twice, I wasn't playing a Coolant truck. Once or twice, things are bad when you're awesome your awesome mech has suffered like an engine hit or two engine hits, and you're barely holding on, but your PPCs are still up and you're firing. I mean, I had a game versus clans. My awesome just had both of its arms blown off, had an engine hit, had a sensor hit. I can't remember the last time I had a sensor hit. And I'm like, hit location, head, confirm, roll for crit confirmed, roll location, sensors. And I'm like, sensors? That adds like plus something to something. I got to look that up because I can't remember the last time that happened. But this awesome was just so badly damaged. I mean, what it would cost to repair it. Then one of the PPCs went, I was down to one, but it was still fighting. It was still putting down dice against the clans. Coolant Truck would have helped in that situation. So there might be times when you can't shed the heat naturally, but usually that mech's in a lot of trouble. Tactically, though, there is a little bit of flexibility. I could see in a larger game, and I say larger game because you're going to have more pieces on the table, and you're playing a little bit for the lulls, and the battle value buy-in is low enough in a larger game that you could do this. There are, in the TAC Ops rules for it, where you spray it as you go. And I think it removes, I want to say 4 heat. That's probably wish listing. I think it removes 2 heat per spray. So you're clearing heat. Now, is that a game changer? It helps. So this idea, if your archer or your longbow is gradually walking, or a energy boat type mech is walking, you've got your coolant truck spraying it. That is a way to bring down a little bit of heat for that battle value. You've got the miniature. You want to play it. You want to utilize it. I could see it in a defender type mission where if you've got a fire base, you're in the city, you're in the starport, and you have some long range heat generating stuff to maintain that rate of fire. In terms of variants, now we're really jumping in the lulls where you're like, I want to play with some different miniatures, see what happens. I'm not responsible for this, of course, but there are variants where you turn the coolant truck into a flame truck, a literal fire truck, and the base defensive flamers are almost doubled. So essentially, infantry support, infantry suppression, low battle value, you're sending that in with your bulldogs and your goblins and your infantry backed by Karnovs and just causing tons and tons of chaos. I do have 2 painted up kind of in my urban pacification, urban renewal type setting where I will send them in with infantry. But that's kind of the last lulls, and that's really for Battletech players that we've been around for a while and kind of seen everything and feel like we've done everything. So it's kind of a novelty to have something like that show up. I won't say game changers, but you're expanding your collection. It's in the narrative. It's low battle value. The core miniature looks like a fire truck. You can utilize that. There are other scaled miniatures. Why not pick up 2 when you can, as you've built a good base collection, so you have something to play with, something to explore, and something to build that Battletech narrative.